Hello teacher friends, my name is Rachel Hull. Welcome back to the Teaching Firsties YouTube channel. I was an elementary school teacher for 22 years with the last 17 of them being in first grade. And during that time, the beginning of my career, I went from like hot mess when it came to my literacy stations to extremely skilled about running them and managing them and keeping them going and really making them a great place for my students to learn. And I'm going to show you how to do some of those. The last video in this series was all about the mistakes I made along the way, kind of like my journey, the things I did wrong, and I wanted to show you those things so that way you didn't have to struggle as much as I did. And one of those mistakes that I made was not having a plan for the kiddos who finished early. How many times have you heard, "I'm done, I'm done"? Too many, right? It's like nails on a chalkboard. But it's catchy too, because once one student says it, they all are done. Before you know it, they're all done. So today I'm going to help you make a plan for your kiddos who are finished early with their tasks at your literacy centers. I have 5 ideas for you to try and 2 different ways to organize your work. But before I get to it, it's really important that you plan your activities for your fast finishers with something that will keep them learning and growing as students. So busy work is out. Avoid busy work. It's more important to extend the activities at the centers rather than give them something to do to keep them occupied. So my first idea, number 1, my first idea for your early finishers is to keep a tub of leveled readers available for them to read. It's not fancy, but the more print your students have in front of them, the better. And we've covered your expectations with them. We've talked about what they are going to do when they're done and how to get a book from a leveled tub. We talked about that in the expectations video that I did. If you missed, by the way, if you missed any of the videos, make sure you can always go back to find them. But when they are finished, they know to take a book from their book tub. And there shouldn't be any announcement or asking permission for it. They should just know what to do because you've practiced that with them. So leveled tubs are important. If your students are at a library station anyway and they've been reading that whole time, perhaps give them another one of these activities. But if they've been at the spelling station, then they can certainly go, and they finish their tasks, then they can certainly go get a book out of a book tub. And my second one, number 2, is to take a book Shelfie. This is one of my favorite things to do. I feel like I need to be Rachel, the joke explainer, when I tell you it's like a book Shelfie, get it? It's a book on a shelf. But anyway, sorry, focus. A book Shelfie to me is a mixture between a book report and a book recommendation. And I want to know the report on the book, what the title is, what the main idea is, who the characters are, really any comprehension skill you're working on. If you're working on compare and contrast, they can tell you what's different about the beginning of the story or the end of the story, or what's different about how the character acted, and then how did they solve their problem, things like that. But I also want to know, did they like the book? I want to have that interaction with them. Do they think their classmates would enjoy it? So this last part, the recommendation part, is totally free advertising for this book. Because I might tell my kiddos that a book is super cool, but if their friends tell them it's cool, then it's all set. They're going to want to read it. So it's like a free advertisement for this book. Now I usually use Seesaw for this. You don't have to, but I found it was really helpful. So I have them take a picture of the book with their Seesaw app, and then I have them record their voice with the voice recorder, and then that way they can tell me the main idea, or did they like it, or I think you should read this book. And there's like a whole lot of things that you can have them say and teach them how to do a book Shelfie, and I'll probably do another video somewhere along the way of how to do a book Shelfie. But then I'll take that recording and I'll share it to my classroom Seesaw blog, and that way all the students can watch it, and then they can go and read the book. So if you don't want to do this digitally, you can always make a response form or any kind of book report pages, that sort of thing. But any kind of interaction with that book would be helpful. So number 3. My third activity for fast finishers is fluency phrases or sight word practice, something with fluency. This can be as easy as writing the sight words out on little cards and putting them on in a baggie or on a ring, like a binder ring. Often, you could just punch a hole on them and hang them, up on your board or somewhere. That way they know, and because you've practiced it with them. They can go and they can just take the ring, their sight words, and just practice. To make your life so much easier, I would color code the cards, and that way you can keep them in sets. That way you can reuse the cards once a student has read, the blue set, then they can move on to another color of sets. I didn't really make a big deal about it. It was helpful for me with organization. That way you could reuse the cards. You don't have to make them all from scratch every time you wanted to use that activity. So I would probably keep them in an area where your activities for early finishers are kept. And number 4, turn my phone off. Number 4, I often required my students to keep their unfinished work in a folder. I just kept it, it wasn't a fancy title, we just called it unfinished work. And, a lot of times, and let me know if this is you too, we never had time to go back and finish it. It just kind of sat there for a long time just because we were so busy, we didn't have a lot to do. So this is a perfect time for them to do that. So finished work in a folder, can be left in their desks or, a certain place in your classroom where they've known because you've practiced it. If you're finished with your work at your centers, you can go finish the work in your unfinished folder. So that's another idea for you, and it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone because you'll be getting to that work that they didn't finish in class. And number 5, with this past year, with digital learning and virtual learning, I'm sure you've collected a ton of digital resources, and you don't want those to go to waste. You probably aren't going to use them like you did last year, but why not put them to good use as an activity for your fast finishers? So I love the games on Boom Cards for this, if you've used Boom Cards, and I'll talk to you about Boom Cards in just a second, but plus you'll still be able to use some of the digital activities, and the time and money you've spent on those won't be wasted. So now let's talk about how to organize your extra activities for your early finishers. You could have just one activity for the whole class. For example, anytime they've finished their work, they go grab their keys of sight words or fluency phrases. And that way everybody has the same activity to do. But if you'd rather keep it open and give your students a choice, you could use popsicle sticks that they could pull. Or my preference is a choice board. I would probably use a choice board if you're giving the students the opportunity to pick which one they are going to do. You could also have them choose a different center to go to. They could go to listening center again, things like that. So you can add more than these 5 to your choice board. And a choice board doesn't have to be fancy or Pinterest worthy. I think I wrote my options on cards and added them to a pocket chart, which is easy peasy. I think wrote them on there and stuck it in the pocket chart. It just needs to be one way for the students to see their options and choose which activity you want to do. And of course, make sure you practice this. Make sure that you have gone through this with them, what to do when they're finished. So these ideas are great for your early finishers. They're simple for you, and yet your students will continue to learn after they've finished with their Literacy Center tasks. If you found this video helpful, make sure to click the like button so more teachers just like you can see it, and make sure to click subscribe because that way you'll be notified next time I put out a video about literacy stations. Like next week, we're going to talk about my favorite type of supplies, like school supplies. I love school supplies. So we're going to put a video up next week for my favorite school supplies that will go into your literacy centers. Have a good one.